Then Joshua called together the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. He said, "You have carried out everything Moses the servant of God commanded you, and you have obediently done everything I have commanded you. All this time and right down to this very day you have not abandoned your brothers, you've shouldered the task laid on you by God, your God. And now God, your God, has given rest to your brothers just as he promised them. You are now free to go back to your homes, the country of your inheritance that Moses the servant of God gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only this, be vigilant in keeping the commandment and the revelation that Moses the servant of God laid on you, love God, your God, walk in all his ways, do what he's commanded, embrace him, serve him with everything you are and have." Then Joshua blessed them and sent them on their way. They went home. To the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses had assigned a share in Bashan. To the other half, Joshua assigned land with their brothers west of the Jordan. When Joshua sent them off to their homes, he blessed them. He said, "Go home. You're going home rich, great herds of cattle, silver and gold, bronze and iron, huge piles of clothing. Share the wealth with your friends and families, all this plunder from your enemies." The Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh left the people of Israel at Shiloh in the land of Canaan to return to Gilead, the land of their possession, which they had taken under the command of Moses as ordered by God. They arrived at Geliloth on the Jordan, touching on Canaanite land. There the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar on the banks of the Jordan, a huge altar. The people of Israel heard of it. "What's this? The Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built an altar facing the land of Canaan at Geliloth on the Jordan, across from the people of Israel." When the people of Israel heard this, the entire congregation mustered at Shiloh to go to war against them. They sent Phinehas son of Eleazar the priest to the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, that is, to the land of Gilead. Accompanying him were 10 chiefs, 1 chief for each of the 10 tribes, each the head of his ancestral family. They represented the military divisions of Israel. They went to the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh and spoke to them. "The entire congregation of God wants to know, what is this violation against the God of Israel that you have committed? Turning your back on God and building your own altar, a blatant act of rebellion against God. Wasn't the crime of Peor enough for us? Why, to this day we aren't rid of it, still living with the fallout of the plague on the congregation of God. Look at you, turning your back on God. If you rebel against God today, tomorrow he'll vent his anger on all of us, the entire congregation of Israel. If you think the land of your possession isn't holy enough but somehow contaminated, come back over to God's possession, where God's dwelling is set up, and take your land there, but don't rebel against God. And don't rebel against us by building your own altar apart from the altar of our God." When Achan son of Zerah violated the holy curse, didn't anger fall on the whole congregation of Israel? He wasn't the only one to die for his sin. The Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the tribes of Israel, "The God of gods is God, the God of gods is God. He knows and he'll let Israel know if this is a rebellious betrayal of God. And if it is, don't bother saving us. If we built ourselves an altar in rebellion against God, if we did it to present on it whole burnt offerings or grain offerings or to enact their sacrificial peace offerings, let God decide. But that's not it. We did it because we cared. We were anxious lest someday your children should say to our children, 'You're not connected with God, the God of Israel.' God made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You Reubenites and Gadites have no part in God. And then your children might cause our children to quit worshipping God. So we said to ourselves, let's do something. Let's build an altar, but not for whole burnt offerings, not for sacrifices. We built this altar as a witness between us and you and our children coming after us. A witness to the altar where we worship God in his sacred dwelling with our whole burnt offerings and our sacrifices and our peace offerings. This way, your children won't be able to say to our children in the future, 'You have no part in God.' We said to ourselves, if anyone speaks disparagingly to us or to our children in the future, we'll say, 'Look at this model of God's altar which our ancestors made. It's not for whole burnt offerings, not for sacrifices. It's a witness connecting us with you.' Rebelling against or turning our backs on God is the last thing on our minds right now. We never dreamed of building an altar for whole burnt offerings or grain offerings to rival the altar of our God in front of his sacred dwelling. Phinehas the priest, all the heads of the congregation, And the heads of the military divisions of Israel who were also with him heard what the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh had to say. They were satisfied. Priest Phinehas son of Eleazar said to Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, "Now we're convinced that God is present with us since you haven't been disloyal to God in this matter. You saved the people of Israel from God's discipline." Then priest Phinehas son of Eleazar left the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, from Gilead, and, with the chiefs, returned to the land of Canaan to the people of Israel and gave a full report. They were pleased with the report. The people of Israel blessed God. There was no more talk of attacking and destroying the land in which the Reubenites and Gadites were living. Reuben and Gad named the altar, "A witness between us." God alone is God. Joshua's charge. A long time later, after God had given Israel rest from all their surrounding enemies, and Joshua was a venerable old man, Joshua called all Israel together, elders, chiefs, judges, and officers. Then he spoke to them, "I'm an old man. I've lived a long time. You have seen everything that God has done to these nations because of you. He did it because he's God, your God. He fought for you. Stay alert. I have assigned to you by lot these nations that remain as an inheritance to your tribes, these in addition to the nations I have already cut down, from the Jordan to the Great Sea in the west. God, your God, will drive them out of your path until there's nothing left of them, and you'll take over their land just as God, your God, promised you. Now, stay strong and steady. Obediently do everything written in the book of the Revelation of Moses, don't miss a detail. Don't get mixed up with the nations that are still around. Don't so much as speak the names of their gods or swear by them. And by all means don't worship or pray to them. Hold tight to God, your God, just as you've done up to now. God has driven out superpower nations before you. And up to now, no one has been able to stand up to you. Think of it, one of you, single-handedly, putting 1,000 on the run. Because God is God, your God. Because he fights for you, just as he promised you. Now, vigilantly guard your souls, love God, your God. Because if you wander off and start taking up with these remaining nations still among you, intermarry, say, and have other dealings with them, know for certain that God, your God, will not get rid of these nations for you. They'll be nothing but trouble to you, horsewhips on your backs and sand in your eyes, until you're the ones who will be driven out of this good land that God, your God, has given you. As you can see, I'm about to go the way we all end up going. Know this with all your heart, with everything in you, that not one detail has failed of all the good things God, your God, promised you. It has all happened. Nothing's left undone, not so much as a word. But just as sure as everything good that God, your God, has promised has come true, so also God will bring to pass every bad thing until there's nothing left of you in this good land that God has given you. If you leave the path of the covenant of God, your God, that he commanded you, go off and serve and worship other gods, God's anger will blaze out against you. In no time at all there'll be nothing left of you, no sign that you've ever been in this good land he gave you. The covenant at Shechem. Joshua called together all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He called in the elders, chiefs, judges, and officers. They presented themselves before God. Then Joshua addressed all the people, "This is what God, the God of Israel, says, a long time ago your ancestors, Terah and his sons Abraham and Nahor, lived to the east of the river Euphrates. They worshipped other gods. I took your ancestor Abraham from the far side of the river. I led him all over the land of Canaan and multiplied his descendants. I gave him Isaac. Then I gave Isaac Jacob and Esau. I let Esau have the mountains of Seir as home, but Jacob and his sons ended up in Egypt. I sent Moses and Aaron. I hit Egypt hard with plagues and then led you out of there. I brought your ancestors out of Egypt. You came to the sea, the Egyptians in hot pursuit with chariots and cavalry, to the very edge of the Red Sea. Then they cried out for help to God. He put a cloud between you and the Egyptians and then let the sea loose on them. It drowned them. You watched the whole thing with your own eyes, what I did to Egypt. And then you lived in the wilderness for a long time. I brought you to the country of the Amorites, who lived east of the Jordan, and they fought you. But I fought for you and you took their land. I destroyed them for you. Then Balak son of Zippor made his appearance. He was the king of Moab. He got ready to fight Israel by sending for Balaam son of Beor to come and curse you. But I wouldn't listen to Balaam, he ended up blessing you over and over. I saved you from him. You then crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The Jericho leaders ganged up on you as well as the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites, but I turned them over to you. I sent the hornet ahead of you. It drove out the 2 Amorite kings, did your work for you. You didn't have to do a thing, not so much as raise a finger. I handed you a land for which you did not work, towns you did not build. And here you are now living in them and eating from vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. So now, fear God. Worship Him in total commitment. Get rid of the gods your ancestors worshipped on the far side of the river, the Euphrates, and in Egypt. You, worship God. If you decide that it's a bad thing to worship God, then choose a god you'd rather serve, and do it today. Choose one of the gods your ancestors worshipped from the country beyond the river, or one of the gods of the Amorites, on whose land you are now living. As for me and my family, we'll worship God. The people answered, we'd never forsake God. Never. We'd never leave God to worship other gods. God is our God. He brought up our ancestors from Egypt and from slave conditions. He did all those great signs while we watched. He has kept His eye on us all along the roads we've traveled and among the nations we've passed through. Just for us He drove out all the nations, Amorites, and all, who lived in the land. Count us in, we too are going to worship God. He's our God. Then Joshua told the people, you can't do it, you're not able to worship God. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He won't put up with your fooling around and sinning. When you leave God and take up the worship of foreign gods, He'll turn right around and come down on you hard. He'll put an end to you, and after all the good He has done for you. But the people told Joshua, no. No. We worship God. And so Joshua addressed the people, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen God for yourselves, to worship Him. And they said, we are witnesses. Joshua said, now get rid of all the foreign gods you have with you. Say an unqualified yes to God, the God of Israel. The people answered Joshua, we will worship God. What He says, we'll do. Joshua completed a covenant for the people that day there at Shechem. He made it official, spelling it out in detail. Joshua wrote out all the directions and regulations into the book of the Revelation of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up under the oak that was in the holy place of God. Joshua spoke to all the people, this stone is a witness against us. It has heard every word that God has said to us. It is a standing witness against you lest you cheat on your God. Then Joshua dismissed the people, each to his own place of inheritance. After all this, Joshua son of Nun, the servant of God, died. He was 110 years old. They buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath-Serah in the mountains of Ephraim, north of Mount Gosh. Israel served God through the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him, who had themselves experienced all that God had done for Israel. Joseph's bones, which the people of Israel had brought from Egypt, they buried in Shechem in the plot of ground that Jacob had purchased from the sons of Hamor, who was the father of Shechem. He paid 100 silver coins for it. It belongs to the inheritance of the family of Joseph. Eleazar son of Aaron died. They buried him at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas in the mountains of Ephraim.